So as the season winds down, the expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken becomes closer and closer to actually being a thing. And it's something that teams have had to worry about for the past couple years and have made moves and acquisitions to make sure their bases are all covered. And the Kings have done that. But who are the Kings really going to protect? Because I think at the beginning of the year, I was pretty confident with the group that you look at and you can say, okay, yes, this guy makes sense. This player is someone we want to protect. But as the year's gone on and you start to get closer looks at guys, you start to see, especially with the younger guys, who's actually performing and who's maybe kind of reached their ceiling already and doesn't have much more to give. It starts to bring in a lot more questions. And so today with this video, I am going to give my, predictions and thoughts on who I think the Kings will protect. And more importantly, because this is why you're on my channel, I'm going to give you who I would want to protect. Because I have a feeling that I'm a little bit more biased to certain players than Kings management is. And also, I'm just not as smart, and I'm not an NHL GM or front office person, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm just going based on what I've seen from this past year, especially, and how I want the team to look going forward. Because after the last game last night against Arizona, it's pretty obvious this team sucks. We are not good enough, and there's going to be a big wave of youth coming, and they're going to knock a lot of people out of, bottom six roles right now who are kind of clinging on. And so it makes it tough to think, who do we really want to keep going forward? Who's going to be the backbone of the team while we start to bring in these young prospects and start changing the team around, start changing the culture, and hopefully go back into a winning team with championship goals? Because right now we're pretty far from it. They've made really good moves the past couple years. It's going to be a big off season. So, as much as this expansion draft is going to affect the future, it really also depends on the off season. And the Kings have a lot of cap space. They need to use it, because you can't rely on 18 and 19-year-old guys to change the whole team around. And that's where, looking at guys who you want to protect also comes in, because are there going to be free agents available that are better than who we have right now? And so maybe keeping them isn't the right move. Well, that's what I'm going to talk about right now. So before you pick who you want to keep, you have to pick the format that you're going to go with. So the more common format is you would protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goaltender. But if you wanted to protect more than 3 defensemen, you could go with just 8 skaters, which most likely would be 4 forwards and 4 defensemen, and then also 1 goalie. That's where it really, I think, becomes tricky, because there's an argument to be made for the Kings going with the 8 skaters if you value Kale. And Kale, he's 22 years old. I'll bring up his stats right now. And not great so far. He hasn't had a ton of time in the NHL. But he's a defenseman, and defensemen take a long time to develop. You look at a guy like Matt Roy, he came into the league much older than Kale, and Sean Walker, same thing. Those guys took 4 years in college. They were able to hone their craft, and even then they needed time in the minors and time in the NHL to adjust and become the type of players they are today. So what is the front office's thoughts on Kale? Do they have a lot of faith in him? Personally, I think from what we've seen so far, I don't know if he's a guy that you're going to take away a couple extra spots of protection for. He's had his chances. He's looked decent, and he does look like a player who, going forward, I think will be an NHL player, that offensive, mobile defenseman. He has the skills. He has the skating for sure. Defensively, he still has to work on his game, and that's always the part of defensemen's games that takes the longest to develop. But I just don't think that for the Kings going forward, Kale is the answer. I think we have the cap space to make a splash in free agency, And I just think we're bringing up so many young players already that I don't know if we need to take the time on Kale Clague as well to develop on the blue line, especially when we already have guys like Mikey Anderson and Toby Bjornfoot who have come in younger than Kale Clague is right now and proven that they can be top 4 defensemen already. And so I think the Kings would rather give those guys more development time, bring in an older, not an older vet, but 25, 26-year-old type of defenseman to play on the team. So with that being said, I think it makes a lot more sense for the Kings to go with 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and then the goalie. The goalie is the easiest thing to cross off. Cal Peterson, goalie of the future. He played back-to-back, which was the first time that Todd McClellan really showed that Cal is the goalie. He is the number one. He's been very diplomatic and kind of saying that, okay, no, we have 2 goalies. It's a rotation. I'm sticking to the rotation. He hasn't liked to answer the questions when asked by the media, but tonight it answered the question without him having to say anything. When we needed to win a game, Cal Peterson was the guy who started. Cal Peterson's the person we're going to protect, and it's going to leave Jonathan Quick unprotected, which, maybe Jonathan Quick gets scooped up by Seattle and it becomes a Marc-Andre Fleury type of thing. I definitely think Quick has years left in him, especially if he has a better team in front of him defensively. He could be a good goalie. And I think if you get Jonathan Quick in a playoff race, he will turn it on. That's what he did against Vegas and the last time the Kings were in the playoffs. And I think he could do that again. I don't know all the other team situations. I don't know which other goalies are going to be unprotected and available, but I don't know if Quickie would get picked by the Kraken. I think either way, you're not going to protect him, but I still have a feeling he would stay with the team even after the expansion draft. So no reason to overthink that pick. The second easiest is the defense. Firstly, Drew Doughty has to be protected. He's got the no movement clause, but you're not, giving Drew Doughty up anyways. So you're protecting Drew Doughty. Olli Maatta is available, I think, because he hasn't had a great year this year. I do think that the Kings could potentially re-sign him. He's looked a lot better than he started the year for the Kings. He's calmed himself down. He's pretty good defensively. And if the Kings wanted to re-sign him for a lower price, I think they could. I don't think many teams are going to be in on him this offseason. But that being said, he's not going to get protected because Sean Walker, homegrown. They're the same age, but Walker's homegrown. I think he struggled a little bit this year, and the ceiling that he had last year and the potential he showed was a lot greater than this year. He really looked like he was going to be a very good offensive defenseman. This year, the offense hasn't really been there, and defensively, he hasn't improved that much, but he's still a guy who the Kings definitely want to keep. He's signed for a couple more years, so easy pick for Sean Walker. And then speaking of re-signing, Matt Roy signed the 4-year contract. He's making big bucks now for him, and he's probably our best defender if you look at just overall on the year. He's the most steady and not someone that we're going to get rid of. So that covers the goalie. That covers the defense. It gets to the hard part, and that's the forwards. The easy guys to protect are Kopitar, Iafallo, and Adrian Kempe. Kopitar, best player on the team, one of the best players in the league. That's a no-brainer. Iafallo, re-signed him. You're obviously going to keep him. He's one of our best players. And then Adrian Kempe, kind of that bridge with Iafallo from the veteran players to the younger players. He's a little bit younger than Iafallo, so I think that helps. I think him being Swedish is also a big thing because the Kings have a lot of Swedish prospects, so he can kind of be a mentor. And if you look at the roster, he's the 5th longest tenured King. I mean, if, for instance, if you were to lose Drew Doughty or Kopitar or Dustin Brown but for an injury and you had to put an A on someone, it's pretty tough to pick because there's not many guys that have been on the team that long. And I think Kempe and Iafallo are probably the two that would be looked at to getting that A in like an injury situation. But yeah, I think Kempe, personally, he's my favorite player. So I'm definitely biased with him, but I just think out of all the players on this team, he has the highest ceiling going forward for that kind of middle group of players. He shows it occasionally, and it's really awesome, and he'll score a bunch of goals, and he'll look like the player that Kings fans want him to be. And, you know, he uses his speed, he uses his size, his strength. He's got the tools. It's just tough for him to put it together. But I think he's done a better job this year of rounding out his overall game. He's one of our better penalty killers. He's worked on defense. He's more physical. And like I said, I think he's taking in more of a leadership role just due to his age and the fact that he's been here quite a while. So once you lock those three up, that's the easiest three to lock up. It becomes really hard. Trevor Moore lately looked really solid. He's making a big case to be protected. And when you look at the other names, I feel like he's the next logical pick. You want to keep Trevor Moore, hometown kid, which is really cool to see. And he's a player that looks like he wants to keep his job. And there's a couple players in the bottom six who, you know, with the young guys coming up, are at risk of losing their spots. Trevor Moore, out of anyone, is the person that said, no, I'm going to be on this team, and made a case for him to stay. And so because of that, I say protect him. I want to see him play on this team longer. Even if it means he's going to get a lesser role, lesser ice time, that's fine. He's a great fourth line guy. You think of a Trevor Lewis type of player who, you know, didn't stuff the stat sheet, but when it came to the identity of those cup winning teams, Trevor Lewis was the identity. And that's why you're going to keep Trevor Moore. Carl Grundstrom, kind of on that point, maybe will fit the Kyle Clifford, less so in the fighting, but just a hardworking, big body guy. He's young. He's going to be re-signed for probably not too much because, you know, he isn't putting up crazy stats, but he's looked solid. And, you know, I think Todd McClellan has a little bit of a beef with him. Maybe he gets shafted a little bit sometimes with getting scratched. But from my eye test, I think he's one of the players like Trevor Moore that really every night works hard. And those kind of guys to keep on the bottom six, the fourth line, are crucial going forward because, like I said, with the Trevor Lewis comparison, you know, that's your identity, is your fourth line. And we see it with teams like Vegas and Minnesota where they're so deep, they're stacked 1 through 4. Those fourth lines are really important, and they set the tone for the rest of the game. And if you have a really good fourth line who you trust and can throw out there, it shifts the dynamics because in a close game, you're still rolling 4 lines, you're keeping your team fresh, and the other team maybe shortens the bench a little bit, and it puts more pressure on them. And so for me, Carl Grundstrom is someone I would protect. I just don't think there's a reason to get rid of him or to lose him. And honestly, there's just not many other people that you have to protect. This is where it gets really tough because there's a few names, you know, Dustin Brown, Athanasiou, Blake Lizotte, Elias Anderson, and Martin Ferc. Those are the 5 that are kind of competing for the last 2 spots. Dustin Brown is a really interesting one because I don't think Dustin Brown would get picked in the expansion draft. I think he's someone that you can kind of keep off your protected list, and just with the contract and the age, I don't see him getting picked up. He's had a really good year this year, but it's slowed down dramatically, as has the whole team's play, but it's very noticeable with Dustin Brown. But that being said, I just can't really put anybody else that would be available right now ahead of him. I think there's something to be said about him being the heart and soul of the organization, one of the best Kings to ever be, 2-time Stanley Cup captain. You know, you want Justin Brown to end his career with LA, and I feel like that will happen. So personally, I don't know if I would pick Dustin Brown because, like I said, I think he would be a decent player to just keep out there without getting picked but I see the team protecting him. And then that leaves one last spot. And realistically, Austin Wagner, Blake Lizotte. I like Wagner. I love his speed. I think it's something that can be a game breaker. He just doesn't have the hands or the brain or skill to really make use of it too much. So Austin Wagner, he's been good for us as just kind of, a depth player for the past couple of years, kind of placeholding, I would say. But I don't know if you really, protect him in the draft. And then Blake Lizotte, I love Blake Lizotte. He's a hard worker. Again, I just don't think the skill is there. I don't think, going forward when you're starting to bring up guys like Byfield, Turcotte, Kaliev, I don't see Blake Lizotte having a spot on the team. And so because of that, it really becomes a battle of Lias Andersson or Andreas Athanasiou. This is where I think it might differ between my feelings and the Kings' feelings. The Kings didn't trade Athanasiou at the deadline, which is something that I really expected to happen. But that's kind of telling. I think the team likes Athanasiou. Like Austin Wagner, the speed is game-breaking. I don't know if he uses it as much as Wagner does, which is a shame because he has more finish, more skill than Wagner. But it's something that you can't find easily. He's a 30-goal scorer. You hear that a lot when he does score. But he's been really inconsistent this year, and it's something that's kind of annoyed me because yes, he's a good player, but there's a reason that teams passed up on him. There's a reason that, he signed with us very late in the offseason. There's not a huge market for Athanasiou just because I don't think the consistency's there. He's more of a player that if you're a very good team, like the Edmonton Oilers last year, he's another guy. He's kind of that secondary scoring type of player. But we're not a competitive team right now. We don't need secondary scoring. We need primary scoring. And Athanasiou hasn't proven to be able to elevate his game to be a primary goal scorer, a primary offensive threat for this team. And so because of that, I would say keep Lias Andersson. Lias Andersson, I don't think he got a fair shake in the NHL. Maybe that's just because he's not good enough. I think I just have the bias of, 7th overall pick. From the time he was drafted, I really liked him. I was thinking the Kings would probably get him, but luckily enough for us, Gabe Vilardi fell to 11. But I think there's more there. I think he brings an identity. He brings grit. He brings a competitiveness level that someone like Athanasiou doesn't bring. And that's where I feel like you want to protect Lias Andersson over Athanasiou because you're not protecting Athanasiou to be a second-line winger. If everything goes right, he's going to be bumped down the lineup. And so I just don't know if Athanasiou is going to be effective as a fourth-line or third-line player, whereas Lias Andersson is one of those Swiss Army knife guys who can play on that fourth line and do the little things, be defensive, kill penalties. But if you needed to, and, if he continues to develop, he could move his way up the lineup. And, there is bust potential. There is that bust tag that he has on him right now. But you have to look at the age. He's 22 years of age. If you think about it, he's 2 years younger than Alex Iafallo was when Iafallo debuted for the Kings. And so he's still very young. He still has a lot of room to grow. He has the ceiling. You don't get picked 7th overall for nothing. And I just think he could fit the team better going forward than Athanasiou could. Even though Athanasiou right now, yes, Athanasiou is the better player. There's no doubt about it. I just think you have to make decisions for the future. And for the future of this team, having a younger guy like Lias Andersson, who maybe is more willing to accept a bottom 6 role than Athanasiou is, I think that's more, more valuable and more of a reason to keep him. So anyways, that is my thoughts. Like I said, I think Athanasiou gets protected by the Kings. I would pick Lias Andersson, but let me know what you guys think in the comments, because it's interesting. There really is a couple questions you have to ask. You know, there's the question of Kale Clegg. There's the question of keeping Dustin Brown protected or exposing him and hoping for him to stay. Or maybe you want Dustin Brown to go. Maybe you want the cap hit to leave. I don't think many fans would really want that. It's not a big deal right now as we're a rebuilding team. But yeah, I mean, and also Martin Ferc. I forgot to mention Martin Ferc. It's really a shame because at the start of the year he was the guy penciled in to be protected, but injuries have just really stopped that for him, and it really stopped all the hype around Martin Ferc, and it's unfortunate. And you want to see him come back and do well, but I guess that being said, it does mean that he most likely won't get picked by Seattle, so he's probably the bigger wild card that's being left off. But injuries are a cruel thing in the sport, and it's tough. It's tough for him, and it's going to be tough for the Kings. It's going to be tough to make these decisions. I don't envy the role. Obviously, you guys know now who I would pick. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know your guys' thoughts, what you would decide. If you think that I'm an idiot and am exposing someone way better than who I'm keeping. But other than that, yeah, thank you guys. If you stuck around for watching, like I said, please comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be doing more of these type of videos as the season ends and we go into the off season. We have the draft coming up, which is going to be big, and hopefully we're going to have a really big free agency because, man, this team needs a big overhaul, and a couple young guys aren't going to fix our problems right now. So let me know, and I will see you tomorrow when we play the Ducks, and hopefully it's a little bit more entertaining than the past couple games.